supports, what shall we make of scientists? I once heard Carl Sagan wax eloquent about all the good that humans could accomplish if we turned the money that goes into weapons into things that benefit human life. You remember Carl Sagan. He's the one who talked about billions and billions of objects in the universe. He talked about the likelihood that we will colonize the solar system and beyond. And he spoke of extraterrestrial life in the most glowing terms. We can be sure, he said, that other forms of life exist. And if they do, they must have evolved far beyond the brutality that characterizes human history. So any contact with them would have immense benefits for us. And he sort of went on in this vein. Now, if you look at it seriously, how could someone say such things in view of the dismal record of human history and the dismal future that cosmologists paint for us? Talk about wishful thinking. Scientists are as capable of wishful thinking as anyone else. So let's consider another misunderstanding about the relation between religion and science. Another prevalent misunderstanding concerns the history of religion and science. Many people believe that religion interfered with the development of science, and religious authorities opposed science at every step. So it was only as science broke free of religion and religious authorities that it was able to advance. According to this widely circulated view, science entered the world when a few people were brave enough to stand up to the authorities of the day, and those authorities did everything in their power to thwart the development of science. Listen to this account. The dawn of modern science began in the 16th and 17th centuries when scientists and philosophers abandoned tradition, mysticism, revelation, and faith. Scientific progress could only occur when the theological and philosophical authorities of the past were discarded. This perspective is completely mistaken. Far from inhibiting the rise of science, religion is actually responsible for it. In fact, science owes its existence to religion. Science consists of an organized and empirically oriented effort to explain natural phenomena, a cumulative process of theory construction and theory testing. And according to one sociologist who studied the history of science and its interrelation with Christianity, this enterprise, the scientific enterprise we just described, arose only once in all of human history, in the 17th century in Western Europe and nowhere else. And the reason, he says, that it arose then, when it did, is precisely because Christianity depicted God as rational, responsive, dependable, and omnipotent. A being who created the universe and expressed himself in it, a being who had a rational, lawful, stable structure awaiting human comprehension. So, the universe is the expression of the mind of God. He goes on to say this: what the great figures involved in the 16th and 17th century blossoming of science, figures like Descartes, Galileo, Newton, and Kepler, what they did was confess their absolute faith in a creator God, whose work incorporated rational rules awaiting discovery. So to sum it up, the rise of science was the natural outgrowth of Christian doctrine. Nature exists because it was created by God. To love and honor God, one must fully appreciate the wonders of his handiwork. Furthermore, because God is perfect, his handiwork functions in accord with immutable principles. The full use of our God-given powers of reason and observation make it possible for us to discover these principles. Science could arise then only in a culture dominated by belief in a conscious, rational, all-powerful creator. Thus it could be said that the rise of science required an 11th commandment in addition to the 10. Know thou my handiwork. So if we look at the history of science, it's clear that science and religion not only can get along with each other, but they go hand in hand, and we wouldn't have science today were it not for Christianity. So let's look at a third misunderstanding. of the relationship between science and religion, and that is this, that science and religion are in conflict with each other. Science and religion are not in conflict with each other, in spite of what many people think. One of the most influential books in this area is entitled A History of the Warfare Between Science, of Science with Theology in Christendom by Andrew D. White, a book that was published in the 1890s. Now, as the title of the book indicates, with this word warfare right there up front, the author views science and religion as opposing each other, in opposition to each other. And this unfortunate characterization has been widely accepted. In discussions of the relationship, it's not uncommon to find words like fight, skirmish, battle, defeat, warfare, controversy, and most frequently, conflict. Many of the claims in White's book have been discredited. And even more frequently, even more significantly, there's a backstory that explains why he wrote the book. In other words, he had an agenda that he was trying to support. In actual fact, there's far less antagonism than these expressions suggest. What White was trying to do was get rid of the influence of denominational authority in the area of private education. He thought private education should be free of religious influence, and so he wrote this book in an attempt to support that particular thesis. As we look at their history and at their practice, there's far less antagonism than many people believe. The founders of modern science were religious. In fact, some of them were very devout. Isaac Newton is a good example. In fact, Newton wrote more on religious matters than he ever wrote on science. Many believers, past and present, accept the conclusions of science. Those who insist, then, that religion and science are at war with each other are often opposed to religion for reasons that are not scientific. In other words, they're appealing to a personal agenda as well. But this still leaves open the question of how these two should be related, religion and science. Now let's consider three ways and try to explore their implications. One is the view that we just referred to, that religion and science are in competition with each other. Why do people think that? Well, one is to say that they are making competing cognitive claims. That is to say, they're making incompatible statements about the way things are. If science and religion are incompatible, then we have only two options. We must either throw out science in the name of religion, or we must throw out religion in the name of science. And of course, there are people on each side that are urging us to do one or the other of those things. I don't believe that is a fruitful way to look at their relationship for reasons that we've already looked at. But here's an alternative to that that many people find popular, and that is to say that science and religion belong to entirely separate spheres of meaning. Science is cognitive. That is to say, science conveys information about the way things are. It makes claims about reality. Religion doesn't do that. Religion is non-cognitive. It's a way of expressing our attitudes or our feelings, but it doesn't communicate any information. It does not make claims about reality. So if you want to go to the facts, if you want to know the facts, you go to science. If you want to share your feelings, well, then you use the language of religion. Science is perfectly adequate within its sphere, but it does not provide a basis for living with courage, resourcefulness, and joy. Religion evokes a sense of confidence and hope, but it really tells us nothing about the world we live in. Sometimes people illustrate these two ways of looking at things by citing different games that people play. Baseball and basketball, for example. If you hear people talking about a double play or a strikeout or a grand slam, you know they're talking about baseball. If they talk about a jump shot, a foul, or a three-point play, then you know they're talking about basketball. Now, if you say, how do you make a double play in basketball? You don't. What's a foul in baseball? Well, it's a foul ball, but it's not the same thing. So you can't interchange this language, and some people say that's what the relation between science and religion consists of.